FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
This is Kerry Lutz, financialsurvivalnetwork.com, and it's time for another Triple Lutz report. This is episode 342, the date March 14th, 2014. Well, dollar is getting slammed yet again. That's right, the dollar's getting nailed. It's down to around 79.44. The good news is crude is down around 98.97. Gold up again, third straight day, fourth straight day. It's up $11.50 to around $383 the ounce. Silver's up 31 cents an ounce. They were up even higher earlier in the day. What's going on? Probably because Russia is cashing in some treasury holdings. Same with China. You know, Russia, we can take. China, the idea of China dumping its treasury holdings, well, that would cause a waterfall, but I don't think China's ready to do it. Look, China and Russia, right now, their interests coincide. In the long run, Russia has as much to be scared from China as the United States. Right now, they're allies, but Russia has to understand that China is turning into a desert. China's end goal is to colonize Siberia. Yeah, that is right, because China is so contaminated. It's so polluted. They have a shortage of pure water. All the water in China is contaminated. It's polluted, and it has to be purified before it can be consumed. And yeah, that's the price of rapid industrialization. Right now, China has declared a war on pollution. Well, take it from the U.S. When you have a war on something in your country, whether it's a war on alcohol, a war on drugs, a war on money laundering, a war on capitalism, generally doesn't turn out too well. It's going to fail. And, you know, Russia is being very short-sighted. Putin's hate for the West, for the United States, bad move. In the long run, it's going to cost Russia. Russia will one day be half of its size. It will lose most of Siberia to Russia. But you know, maybe that's 20, 30 years down the road. Maybe the United States will break up into 5 or 6 countries. I don't know what's going to happen any better than you do, but I do know that right now it's getting interesting. I mean, you're having this shadow banking breakup, seize up in China. The bubble is bursting. Will it cause China to wind up backing the yuan, the renminbi with gold? Yeah, but it's going to be a fake back. Anytime you have a currency that is partially backed with gold, it's fraudulent, because a currency is either completely backed by gold or it's totally unbacked by gold. The reason you have partial backing by gold is so that the central government can play games, so they can print up more units than are actually backed by gold. It's what happened in the U.S. during the Depression. It's what's happened in the United States since the founding of the Federal Reserve from 1913 to 1971. They played games with the amount of currency in circulation and the amount of gold that was backing it. So unless your currency unit is 100% convertible into gold, it is really a fiction. In the good old days of the U.S., it was 1 for 1. Every unit of gold Every dollar was directly convertible into gold. And then the banks issued their own notes that were supposedly just warehouse receipts for gold they were holding. Eventually, they would get caught cheating. There would be a suspension of specie payments. In other words, conversion of paper into gold. This is what happened during Andrew Johnson's time. This game goes on and on. Nobody is going to believe it once the Chinese say, oh, we have all this gold. We have 15,000 tons of it, but you can't see it. Just like you can't see the Federal Reserve's gold, just like you can't see the U.S.'s gold supposedly in Fort Knox, in Denver, in West Point. It's all nonsense. Until the destruction of fiat currency, you can say that it's backed by 1% gold, 15%, 30%. It's just not going to matter. That's my opinion on the subject. So take it for what it's worth. But I don't buy this conversion that there's going to be a gold-backed yuan, renminbi, because then it's game over. Then central banking just becomes a game of bookkeeping where we have X number of ounces or tons of gold. We have X number of currency units, which are in effect warehouse receipts for that amount of gold on deposit. And here's our books. That's all we do. We're just a depository for gold. It's just not going to happen because then they can't play games with the number of currency units. They can't try to control the economy. And they're still commies over there in China. No matter how you cut it, they're still into control and command and control. That's what they're into. So until they turn into stark raving free market lunatics over there, that's their game. And until somebody proves to me that they're otherwise, I'm not believing it. Okay? Till you bring me evidence. So gold is just not going to perform its natural function until it's allowed to perform its natural function. So it's all well and good that Russia and China have all the world's gold, and great. But in the meantime, the U.S. is having rapidly expanding oil production. You might think fracking's contaminating the world. Good, fine. Believe it. Just show me the facts. That's all I want to see. I want to see facts about that. You can't provide it. You won't be able to provide it. They don't exist. But anyway, if you can, I'm all ears. Show it to me. So, in the meantime, the U.S., they're producing, according to Dr. Frack, well in excess of 1 million barrels a day in North Dakota. All the statistics seem to point to it. Very shortly, probably in the next year and a half, they'll be producing 3 million barrels of oil in Texas. The fracking boom goes on and on. The big story isn't even in Texas. It's in Oklahoma, in Mississippi, in other places. The sky's the limit for the production in the U.S. for oil. And it's just going to be interesting to see, oh, you want to sell oil for gold? Great. We'll take the gold for the oil. I don't believe that's ever going to happen. But prove me wrong. Love to see it. When the U.S. is exporting 8 million barrels of oil, they're going to be paying in gold? I don't think so. Don't get me wrong. I don't think this country's headed in the right direction by any stretch. But all these illusions of gold being the medium of exchange of the world, not going to happen until this entire fiat currency structure collapses, which I believe it's in the process of doing. But I just don't see any government voluntarily embracing a gold-backed currency unit. Not going to happen. The people will force it upon the governments. The governments will not voluntarily embrace it because why be in the government if you have to just have a gold standard? You'd have to be a publicly spirited public servant, and I haven't seen one of them in a long time. But if you've got an example of one, I'd love to hear about it. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about this because, look, if they wanted a gold standard, if any of the world's governments did, if any of the world's central banks did, we would have had one by now, and it would be functioning, and the world would be a heck of a lot better place than it is now. But we don't have one, and there's a reason we don't have one, and you just have to look around and you'll know it. You can see it, and the reasons are really, really obvious. And
Washington.
So look, you know it, I know it, and they won't embrace a gold standard until there is absolutely no choice, and half measures, as we've seen in the past, don't work. Just look at Bretton Woods. Worked for a while, eventually it failed, and then we wind up on a fiat standard, and it's the Wild West of currency wars where we're at now. Hey, you can't say this is not an entertaining show. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, she's at it again. This time she claimed that the Constitution is 400 years old, and she's up there in Congress. She's just a hysterical individual. She's giving thanks to the majority, the Republicans, chairman, about our deliberative Constitution, the discussion that reinforces the sanctity of this nation and how well it is that we have lasted for some 400 years operating under a Constitution that clearly defines what is constitutional and what is not. And she's caught on video, and she's probably classified as the dumbest person in Congress, dim, and some people, one guy thinks that she's just engaging in performance art, probably affirmative action here. She has an undergraduate degree from Yale and a law degree from the University of Virginia. But more Triple Lutz Report up next on the Financial Survival Network.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Do you have Medicare or health insurance through your employer? If so, listen up. The healthcare reform wasn't written to save the healthcare industry or even to lower healthcare costs. Shoot, it isn't even designed to insure the uninsured. It's just a temporary political byproduct. Like a flat rock you step on in a swiftly moving stream, Obamacare is just a means to an end. Want to learn more about Obama's ultimate objective? Then you'll want to review our latest research presentation found on oclies.com. In it, a health expert and industry insider explains what you think you know about caring for your health is about to drastically change in 2014. Plus, he details the simple steps you could take to save thousands of dollars per year in health costs. It's free for you to preview at oclies.com. Don't waste time. What you don't know about the healthcare reform could hurt you and your family.
FSN Radio.
When your accountant wants tax-free income, this is what he does. Accountants know the law. They also know that any American could legally get paid up to 3 times per month, 100% tax-free. That's 36 tax-free checks each year. It doesn't matter what you make already. This simple strategy could work for anyone. Go to www.irsrevenge2.com to learn how. That's irsrevenge2.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
So, you know, there's very little reporting that takes place on the mainstream media. I mean, they're just a bunch of boobs. They're sycophants to the regime that's in power now. Gal by the name of Cheryl Atkinson, I think maybe she says it's Cheryl Atkinson, at CBS. She's been trying to quit there for years, and they won't let her. And finally this week, she announced that she's leaving the network. It's a culmination of a series of clashes between her and her bosses. But finally, they're letting her go. It's just amazing that she tried to get out of it last year. Her boss said, all right, we'll address the issues. Of course, they're stifling her. She's been on every major scandal of this administration, and they've been trying to stifle her. It's just remarkable. She said, "It's not a matter of me being on the air. It's the idea that so few of the incredibly interesting and important, original, and investigative topics brought to the table, often exclusively, could find no home at CBS in the past 3 years or so." And as for her departure from CBS, after 2 decades she's been there, she said, "I feel good about it." Well, wouldn't you? I mean, she's been stifled. They've been trying to basically work with the administration to stonewall all of her investigations of the Obama administration. And she was just stymied in getting airtime for stories for a wide range of subjects, including numerous corporate scandals, which we know so many of them, and probably a lot of them involving big banks and other banksters. None of the investigative stories that she proposed in the past year were green-lighted for the CBS Evening News because they don't deal with news anymore. And in fact, most of her pitches were turned down. She wound up probably working stories like, Girl Scout cookie sales drives and blood drives and, meaningless news garbage that they have. I mean, how many of you actually watch television news anymore on the mainstream media? It's just pointless. So we wish her good luck. She'll probably wind up on Fox News or on a website. She might want to think about going to Wall Street on Parade, one of our favorite sites. Pam Martens, a really gifted investigative reporter. She's covered the banker deaths totally in depth. She's got charts here that'll blow your mind out. She just broke the story on the fact that the Bank of England destroyed all of its crisis era records. Shock of all shocks. Broke the story on the fact that Swiss insurers and JP Morgan have more than suicides in common. I mean, man, what the heck is happening here? She caught a story that the Fed chair Bernanke held 84 secret meetings in the lead up to the Wall Street collapse. I mean, that was pretty shocking. That in the years 2007, 2008, 2 key years of the crisis, but for unexplained reasons, Fed Chairman Bernanke continues to redact 84 meetings from his appointment calendar that occurred between January 1 and 2007 and the pivotal collapse of Bear Stearns on the weekend of March 16th, 2008. And you got to wonder why. What is he hiding? And, this is just what government has turned into. You can't handle the truth. And I'm just curious, what are they hiding? What are they trying to stop us from finding out? But you know all that already because this is the government. And this is your government of the people, for the people, and by the people, right? And just because Nanny Bloomberg is no longer mayor of New York, don't think he's finished with the double gulp soda ban. He still believes that it's the way to go. He had an interview with Katie Couric, and she asked him, what about banning sodas bigger than 16 ounces? It's in legal limbo now, but in hindsight, was that a mistake? Oh no, replied Bloomy. We'll win that battle. He adds, you're going to see that come across the whole country because it doesn't prevent you from buying 32 ounces. It just makes you realize you got to have 2 cups. It was simply reminding you that it's an enormous quantity, a 32 ounce. Why don't you take 2 16s And most people are going to say, oh, wait a second, I'll take one. I mean, this interview is great because he nails Comrade DeBlasio. He said it was a mistake for Comrade to boycott the St. Paddy's Day parade because they don't allow gays to march openly. I mean, give me a freaking break. Who the heck cares? The city is going to collapse, and we're worried about boycotting parades. And, you know, that's just a stupid thing. Like, really, give me a break. And Kerry pressed Bloomberg on whether he meant he disagrees. And, you know, Bloomberg is so namby-pamby on it. But also, Bloomberg attacked Comrade DeBlasio for his plans to tax the wealthy and to oppose charter schools, which is kind of a big deal in New York because those public schools are not fit for human habitation. They're just hot seats of criminal activity. I remember one time I visited my friend Eddie Del Vecchio, and this was 40-something years ago, at his school, Central Commercial High School. It was located where now the Harley Hotel is located, or it's the Helmsley Hotel on 42nd Street and 2nd Avenue. And I mean, these kids, this was 40 years ago. They were smoking dope in the bathrooms. They were cursing out the teachers. I mean, if Joe Clark was there, he would have slammed those kids with a baseball bat and tossed their asses out of school. But not in this school. It was just amazing. So, you know, he's totally slamming Comrade for opposing the charter schools, trying to tax people and having them move companies out of the city is stupid. He says it's good populist rhetoric, but it's a disaster. And he said charter schools generally provide students, mostly low-income and minority kids, with a great education, but he didn't hesitate to call the UFT's low-performing East New York charter school a disgrace. The UFT, United Federation of Teachers, that's the union, has a charter school in East New York that's like lagging all the other charter schools. It's like a total dismal failure. And, you know, he really let them totally have it. And I mean, he's obviously harboring quite a bit of resentment, especially after that shameful inauguration, which was just disgusting. But, you know, listen to this. So Bloomberg is now serving as the United Nations Special Envoy for Cities and Climate Change, and he vowed to continue his national lobbying on gun control, obesity, and limiting the size of sugary drinks. And as one of the world's wealthiest people, he said it would be a shame if he didn't continue his ways on philanthropic and social issues. Asked at the end of the interview what he wanted his tombstone to read, Bloomberg answered, I guess maybe something cute like made a difference. Yeah, like I would like it to say, got me to lose 10 pounds. That would be great, Mayor Bloomy. Nanny Bloomy. I would think it would be great, like, Nanny Bloomberg, he wore a blue dress. Give me a freaking break. I mean, how about he minded his own freaking business and he was stopped being a busybody and driving everyone crazy. Give me a break. This guy is he just doesn't know when to shut up. Man. Oh, another thing he said on homelessness, which rose to unprecedented levels under Bloomberg. He said you can literally fly first class to Kennedy Airport and say to the taxi driver, take me to the shelter system, and we have to provide shelter. And Kerry asked, do you really think people do that? And he said, there's a handful. There's no question there's a handful. Not a lot of people, he answered. But what really does happen is that if you go to a shelter and you say you're living in a shelter and then you apply for public housing, they put you at the front of the list. So it's a perverse incentive to get you to go to public housing. You know, go to a shelter, then you get on the front of the list for public housing. That's what it's really all about, Nanny Bloomberg. You've neglected to mention that. So you're incentivized to go to the shelters because then you get into public housing quicker and you go in front of all those people who've been on the list for years who don't want to do that. It's been another Triple Lutz Report. This is Kerry Lutz signing off.
Next, go to FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.